Hi guys, in this video we will look at some of the themes in the drama The Lighthouse Keeper's Wife by Charles J. Fourie. The first theme we will look at is sanity and insanity. The actions and words of characters appear to be sane and insane at the same time. We need to ask ourselves, who is really insane in the play? Is it the obvious characters or the less obvious ones? The sanity and insanity of the characters are subjective, so it depends on who you ask. Who is actually insane? Is it Lighthouse and Stella, or Barney and Lamprecht? And what evidence is there of sanity and insanity for each of the characters? We will have a look at this shortly. Is it possible to have moments of sanity or madness and not be insane? We hear Lighthouse say, "Don't slip into madness," which implies that he can fall into madness at any time, but most of the time he appears to be sane. What appears to be poetry to one person could seem like nonsense to someone else. So for example, Stella believes that Lighthouse is sane and that his words are poetic, but Lamprecht believes that the man is completely insane and describes his poetry as nonsense. Let's look at some evidence of Lighthouse' sanity. So the first piece of evidence is when he gives advice to Stella. He tells her to leave the island before it's too late, and this is based on observations and experiences that he has had on the island, which makes sense. He is also able to think about Stella's well-being and how she could possibly be negatively affected by the island and its inhabitants. Here is the quote that he says to her. "I see many come here, bright with hopes and dreams. Leave before it's too late." So he is aware of his surroundings. He is able to draw conclusions from his own life. The next piece of evidence is when he is able to judge characters and their situations. He watches Lamprecht and he is able to point out what his issues are. He says, "Some they drown in sea, others they drown in love." So he is able to diagnose what Lamprecht's problem is, even without personally knowing him. He is able to point out shipwrecks and name them, which shows us that he is aware of his surroundings. He says, "That one, she is my Flora. She got herself lost in the fog one night, long time ago. She was carrying spices from the east. Smell this." He is also self-aware and recognizes that he sometimes loses control and slips into madness momentarily. He says, "Madness, she is like the sea. She drowns you if you let her." Lighthouse is also able to speak metaphorically and describes the mainland in a poetic way. "Eta, she's a beauty, that one. She sleeps with one eye open. Her mouth is filled with stars. Her face bright like the early morning spring. Her breath smells like sweet potatoes. When she smiles, the sun goes down over her head." Lighthouse is also able to recall fond memories of his time on the mainland. And here's a quote to support that. "Lighthouse dodges Lamprecht, and after subduing him, he lets him go. This persuades Lamprecht that he is not mad after all. Lighthouse is able to realize that he is in danger and protect himself. Lighthouse also has a good knowledge of the Bible, and his knowledge of the book of Revelations is accurate. Here is a quote to support this point. But now we'll look at some evidence of Lighthouse' insanity, why he is mad. He speaks to himself often in disconnected thoughts, which appears not to make sense to us. He thinks people are waiting for him back on the mainland, and we know this is clearly not the case. He persists in rebuilding the boat even though he knows that Barney will destroy it each time. He also claims to see spirits, and here are some quotes from the novel to prove this point. He literally tears and eats pages from a Bible. We see in the book where he takes a worn Bible from his pocket, tears a page from it, and chews it. He even offers Stella a page and tells her to eat it. When Lighthouse first got arrested for stealing vegetables, he told the magistrate of the court that he is the savior who has come to save his people. So these are all pieces of evidence that point towards Plyke's insanity. Let's look at some evidence of Stella's sanity. She is sympathetic and compassionate towards Plyke's, and she tells the characters that she wants to help him. She appreciates and understands Plyke's poetry about the mainland, and can actually relate to him. She recalls fond times in her life in Mossel Bay and Port Nolla. She tries to speak to Lamprecht about her thoughts and feelings on multiple occasions. She tries to be understanding of Lamprecht's jealousy, and she even moved to Robben Island to try and please him. Stella is able to discern the nature of people's actions. She reasons with Barney and tells him that he is cruel for destroying Plyke's boat. Let's look at some evidence of her insanity. Stella does not leave her husband even though he is controlling, abusive, and violent. He attacks people for no reason. At some stage, she cowered away from him when he approached her while being angry. Stella relates to Plyke's, who is considered to be insane, which implies that she understands his madness and possibly experiences it as well. She continually writes letters addressed to her husband, but never gives them to him. She listens to Plyke's command and eats pages from a Bible without thinking twice. Towards the end of the drama, she speaks and expresses the same disconnected thoughts as Plyke's did in the beginning. She tries to rebuild Plyke's boat and escape from the island, which is basically a suicide mission. She does not attempt to reason with Lamprecht in the last act. After a sane conversation, she talks to herself in the same way that Plyke's did initially. Let's look at evidence of Lamprecht's insanity. In the beginning, we assume that Lamprecht is sane and his actions are justifiable. As the drama progresses, we start to question his sanity. His jealousy regarding Stella is irrational and extreme. He nearly killed a man for merely looking at Stella, his wife. He moves away from a town as soon as someone notices Stella. He has a very controlling nature as he tries to keep Stella at home and tells her not to walk around the island or talk to anyone. For example, he warns her against going near the lepers or the insane and demands, "Why can't you be like other women and stay at home?" He cuts Plyke's tongue out while in a jealous rage. He thinks Plyke's was talking about his wife. He is paranoid and fearful that anyone and everyone is romantically interested in Stella. At some stage, he even grabs Barney by the throat and threatens him. Let's look at evidence of Barney's insanity. Just like Lamprecht, in the beginning of the book, we assumed that Barney was sane, and he was acting a certain way because of his job and his responsibilities. But as the drama progressed, we also began to question his sanity. Let's look at some evidence that proves his insanity. He has no sympathy for Plyke's, even though he is his caregiver. He has an abusive nature towards Plyke's, who he deems as harmless. So if Plyke's was harmless, why was there a need to bully him? He is eager and willing to make Plyke's disappear for the sake of a stranger. He has an unhealthy obsession with bodybuilding and wrestling. Now let's look at the next theme, imprisonment and freedom. In the drama, we see that the desire for freedom is felt intensely by those who are imprisoned or trapped. In this case, Plyke's and Stella. Plyke's is desperate to escape the mental asylum as well as Robben Island and to return to the mainland. He builds and rebuilds a boat to escape, even though it is regarded as a suicide mission. Stella is trapped in her relationship, which lacks intimacy. She desperately seeks intimacy and trust from her husband. She writes him love letters and tries to reason with him, which shows us that she has hope of freedom. Plyke's is powerless against bullying and humiliation by Barney, a warden, and this in turn brings out the worst in him. Barney insults and degrades Plyke's by forcing him to address him as main boss, which shows that he is not free. Plyke's experiences imprisonment. Plaikis is so desperate for freedom that his hope survives on very little. His hope is building his boat and planning on escaping. He is so desperate for freedom that he will do anything to keep his hope alive. Lamprecht wants all possible rivals for his wife's attention to disappear. This includes Plaikis, who is actually innocent. And therefore Lamprecht unconsciously imprisons Stella in their relationship. Lamprecht continually tries to control Stella, which limits or removes her freedom. He discourages her from exploring the area and warns her not to speak to people on the island. He demands to know why she can't be like other wives and stay at home. A relationship can be just as restrictive of one's freedom as an island or a prison. We also see that freedom is in the mind, not in one's circumstances. Plaikis made a decision to pursue freedom no matter what, which in itself freed him and gave him hope of a future. Plaikis was unperturbed even though Barney would continually destroy his boat just before completion. His boat was his hope. When Plaikis is locked up in the kraal near the end of the play, Lamprecht promises to have him released. Stella tells him he doesn't need you to set him free. He is free, implying that Lamprecht is not in control of Plaikis' freedom. Stella wrote love letters to Lamprecht in secret in order to keep her hope of a loving relationship alive. This gave her the strength to go on despite feeling trapped. Had these characters given up hope, they would not have gained freedom. Let's look at Lamprecht and Stella's relationship. Their relationship lacks intimacy and trust. Lamprecht is jealous and distrustful. He says, "He would have tried his luck with you. They always do. I see these bastards coming and you leading them on." He doesn't respect Stella's privacy. He steals the letter she has been writing and gives it to Barney to read to him, which proves he is distrustful of her. Lamprecht tries to control Stella. He tells her not to go near the lepers or the insane and asks her, why can't you just be like other women and stay at home? He reacts negatively to any opposition or independence of opinion. He says, what's that supposed to mean?" when he speaks to Stella. Stella is uninterested in Lamprecht's views or opinions. Stella simply nods and appears not to be paying attention when he is speaking about Prospero. Stella ignores Lamprecht's instructions to be careful about who she sees on the island and shows a lack of respect for him when she says, "Forget it, no use explaining to you." Stella appears to be defiant in her conversations with Lamprecht. "Don't tell me what to do," and slams her fist on the table. Damn it, damn it. Lamprecht recalls the way they used to dance in Mossel Bay early on in their marriage and calls Stella to dance with him. Stella ignores Lamprecht's calls. He then dances with a broomstick instead. Her actions imply that their relationship has lost the joy and intimacy that it once had. Lastly, let's look at some symbolism we see in the play. Plaikis is seen saying, "Bad tides are coming," on multiple occasions throughout the drama. One assumes he is referring to a literal storm. However, he could also be referring to the conflict between the characters, which reaches a climax when Lamprecht cuts off his tongue. I hope this has helped you guys gain some clarity on some of the themes. Please feel free to leave me a comment if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to help you.